Yeah, so stuff happens in this episode.
The man is Heinrich Kramer, and he is writing the most blood-soaked book of the 15th century, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, a book that would torment the world for a century after its release and be responsible for the torture and death of 70,000 innocent people.
Treating of three necessary concomitants of witchcraft, which are the devil, a witch, and the permission of Almighty God.
He goes on to say that female empowerment would bring on the apocalypse. He even made the title of the book Female, to hammer home his point. Malleus Maleficarum is a hammer used only on women.
So, we must find the mark. We must find the mark.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, located not far from the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts and Lord Nibbler are in my room. May have seen Lord Squeakington recently, but I don't know. There is a cat that looks an awful lot like him, but is not him. It may have been that one that I saw. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. And this is a Hexenhammer episode, which is benign. I will describe it that way because I had a huge bunch of issues for convoluted reasons in trying to find the file and then get it edited and everything. And I've sort of blanked out on what we read. There is a discussion of Egyptian concrete in the episode, so you've got that to look forward to. Now, as far as stuff going on around here, it's warming up, which is good because it looks like by the end of this week I'll actually be able to take a fucking shower instead of having to do a goddamn sponge bath because that shitty water heater. Although I have decided what I'm going to do, since I already kind of have the stuff anyways, is I've poked around and it looks like it'll be cheaper for me to scrounge the shit I've got around here and make a solar preheater for the water heater I've got than it will be for me to repair the damage to the floor and in the area where the damn water heater is and get a new water heater and hook it up. The other thing that I'll be able to do if I do this is I'll be able to relocate the water heater to an area that's easily accessible to turn it on after the power goes out, so so I don't have to worry about opening that area up and letting a certain somebody escape again. Work, well, we didn't work overtime this weekend, and this is the weekend of fucking time change, so yay on that. Maybe that's why they didn't have us work. I don't know. One of the things that I have been thinking about doing was changing the name of the podcast. The reason for that is because there's been a couple of times where it's like somebody who has a larger podcast than mine actually could have mentioned this show on theirs, and then perhaps I would have gotten a few more listeners, but the name would have thrown up a red flag. The content wouldn't have been a big issue, but just throwing the name out there would have been. And let me explain why I came up with the title for this podcast that I did. Because I've never fully explained it before. Way around the time I started this, there was a podcast called Atheists on Air, which some of you might remember. It was hosted originally by Cash and Love. And they went on to do the first Reason Con. Now, the podcast was really, really edgy. I mean, think an edgier version of the Scathing Atheist podcast, okay? And then after the first Reason Con, Love left for some reason. I have no idea why. I suspect something happened at Reason Con that she didn't agree with, but I don't know. And then things on the podcast, well, my personal opinion, they turned nasty. And here's what I mean by that. One of the bits that Cash started doing, and he may have done this before Love left, but the tone of it changed. The tone of the whole show changed after Love left. And I quit listening shortly after she left. I don't remember exactly how far along it was. And you can't find those original episodes on the web anymore, because I've looked for them. Anyways, so Cash would call one of these prayer hotlines that run by a mega church. And he would pretend to be a pastor from the Catfish Creek trailer park. And he was calling and asking for help because he was, torn about the thoughts that he was having. And not always, but almost always, these thoughts would be that he might be gay. And yeah, there's ways you can play that and not be homophobic. Cash, in my opinion, really didn't manage to do that. A lot of this, there was I'm not saying Cash was a homophobe, but there was definitely an element of homophobia in the stuff that he was saying. And it could have just been that was the character he was portraying, because let's face it, an awful lot of homophobes are homophobes because they can't admit to themselves that they're gay. So he would have these conversations with the people who were answering the prayer lines. And, he would talk to them about stuff, and of course they're trying to, they're talking to him and they're doing whatever. And here's why it bothers me. First of all, the woman I was dating when I moved into this beer can, she was a somebody at the time who would probably have described herself as a Christian, but she really didn't go to church. She used to be a really devout Christian, and not in a good way. And this was before I met her, but like her and her family had gone to Benny Hinn when he'd been in town, so that gives you an idea of how religious they were, and how they were unable to discern that they were being conned. And as I've mentioned, in the next town over, there is a broadcast facility for the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and I can't remember who the fuckers were who ran that, but they were scammy mega preachers, and they had a facility here. They had one in Texas, and I think one in Virginia. I don't remember. And she worked there for, I don't know. Well, she was a volunteer there for I don't know how long. And she told me, that she quit once she realized that they were only interested in the money. So, I don't remember which prayer line Cash was calling into, but it was one like that. And I know that the people who volunteered at that call center where those prayer requests were being taken, they were getting screamed at because the goal of those prayer lines was not to actually offer prayer and comfort to somebody, but to get them to make a fucking donation. And so Cash was running these gags, and, regardless of whether or not you thought they were funny, if you're somebody who's been in customer service and had to sit there on the phone, genuinely trying to help the person on the other end, and you're getting screamed at by an asshole supervisor, either right then or later in the meeting because you're not getting money from this person, or the call's taking too long, or both, it's not a good thing. So I had a real hard time finding those bits that Cash played as being funny. Even if he was just calling in because he had a hangnail and he wanted them to pray for him, or, some absurdly silly thing like that, I felt bad because the person on the other end of the line, their job was to extract money out of him and get him off the phone as quick as they could. And, they've got this guy who maybe he's saying the right kinds of things that they need to realize that they're being scammed, or maybe he's not, but they're going to be panicking at some point in these conversations. Or they're going to be chewed out by their supervisor for something that's not their fault. So, after hearing a couple of podcasters who, in their day jobs, made much, much more money than I did at the time, say, well, we can't keep doing this podcast unless we get $400 an episode because we just can't afford the cost. I was like, if I could make an extra $400 a month, I could get out of this shithole. So I started the podcast, and I went with The Atheist in the Trailer Park as a way to passively aggressively, which I'm sure Cash would have appreciated because he's an Exmo, punch back at the idea that, we's all just clean as teeth slack-jaw yokels in trailer parks in the South. And, since Cash is no longer doing Atheists on Air, and the guys who did the podcast that they claimed, we gotta make $400 a month, we can't keep, or $400 an episode, and we can't afford to keep doing this, despite the fact that we all work in high-paying IT jobs, are no longer doing their shows, and I'm still here churning out content of dubious quality. Maybe I should probably change the title. I can maybe get more folks to mention it or whatever. Then this little thing happened on Blue Sky. There's a poster on Blue Sky by the name of John Rosenberg. Doesn't matter if you've heard of him or not. He is a web comic artist and writer. Some people know a lot about him. I'm not sure exactly why I started following him. It may have been that he was included in a starter pack, which is one of the great things about Blue Sky, because, any social media site works off of, the network effect. The more people you know on that site, the more likely you are to participate in that site. And the more useful you are going to find that site. So, somehow I was following him. I knew he was a somebody in the sense that he had a pretty good name recognition. But I'm not at all familiar with his web comics or anything else that he's done. So yesterday, he posts a comment about Representative Al Green speaking out during Trump's address to Congress. And Rosenberg was in favor of what Al Green did, which I am too. I'd rather folks had adopted the Serbian method where they started throwing smoke grenades, but that's neither here nor there. And I responded to his post about that with a comment along the lines of, and, to show our support for Rep. Al Green, be a good idea to donate to his campaign. Rosenberg responded with, I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt. Maybe you could make a donation in my name. Right? So let's all agree, straight off the bat, the American medical system is fucked. And nobody should be hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt. I will say that being hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt is kind of a luxury, because that means you went to the doctor, they said, you've got a serious illness, we're going to have to treat you for it, and so on. Yes, when I couldn't breathe because of the flu, I called 911, I had an ambulance haul me down to the hospital, but if when I got to the hospital and they ran their tests, they said, we're sorry, you've got lung cancer, but it is treatable and we can start the process, I would have told them, fuck no, because I can't fucking afford it. There's no point. Right? Let's be honest. The best treatments we have for lung cancer out there buy you a couple of years. Which is nothing to be sneezed at. But, the only reason I would agree to such things is if, I could be certain, it'll keep me alive long enough so that I outlive my 94-year-old mother. Just because if I die before she does, I know it'll kill her. Whereas if, I die the day after she does, it doesn't matter. But, I didn't say anything like that. I didn't go after that. I said, my response was, I too have medical debt, but are you telling me you can't afford to give him $10 in a political campaign? At which point he called me an asshole. And then I responded with, hey dude, I live in a trailer park in Tennessee. You are most definitely punching down. Again, At this point, all I knew about that guy was his name and that he had some kind of fame, right? I didn't know what it was for. I didn't know whether he was a political commentator or, or what. I knew he had some kind of fame that people on the internet would know. And that was when he blocked me. My response was, okay, I'm going to go look up and see who this guy is. So I go to Wikipedia and look him up. Sure enough, he's there. Dude's about the same age as me, a couple of years younger, no big deal. He graduated from Cornell University. I don't know if he got there on scholarship, merit, whatever. I never had that kind of luck to be able to go to a prestigious university like Cornell. He's had a better life than I have, and I'm not saying he shouldn't have that. I'm just saying, dude, you can afford $10 to give to a politician you agree with, and in a country like America where politics runs on money, that's a thing that should be done. And I'm not somebody who's so wound up with any particular individual that I'm going to track down and find out whether or not they actually donated anything at all to a particular candidate. My goal was simply just to point out that, hey, if you like a politician and you're in America, you need to give that politician money, because that's the only hope we have of making a dent in the shit that's happening right now without actually going to civil war. But apparently, my suggesting a donation, and I did not name a dollar amount. I didn't name anything, and I didn't even say, you, John Rosenberg, you absolutely must donate to Representative Al Green of Texas to support him. I just made a kind of generic comment in the hopes that it would inspire people who saw this to donate. I don't fucking care if he donates to this or that politician or this or that party. I just, that's the trigger. It's like those, I know lots of people complain about certain groups or social media accounts that, they make a meme and they say, and in the meme it says, like and share if you agree. And yeah, that's fucking stupid. But a lot of people would not like and share that meme if it didn't have those words in it. And that's all I was trying to do with Rosenberg. Just, get people reading that to think that, oh, hey, I like a politician and politics runs on money, so I need to give that politician some amount of money. I didn't care if he donated to Al Green or whomever, if he donated at all. But he got real fucking butthurt over the idea that somebody would say something like that. So, given that I'm an obscure guy in the middle of fucking nowhere and he was most definitely punching the fuck down, I think I'm gonna keep the name. Unless somebody comes up with something that communicates the same information, but it is more palatable to the general population of the U.S. One thing I have to add before I get out of here and get to Skullbeard and I reading more from Hexenhammer, and this episode's going to be a little short because this is what I had, and because of things like time change and having to deal with the shit related to changing how I do the podcast as Microsoft is killing Skype, so I'm trying to figure out replacements for it. And, I don't know if Canada's switched over to daylight saving time or not. And I'd rather not deal with that if I don't have to right now, especially since, again, I'm trying to figure out shit with the software related to recording the podcasts when we do the calls. So, anyways, but I was like, okay, I want to make sure that I give Al Green money because, he did stand up. He did speak out. So I start doing a search. If you're not familiar with him, he's an African-American politician from Texas. He does not have a campaign website. There is his page on the U.S. House of Representatives website, but try as I might, I could not find a campaign website. I could not find any place where it was obvious that you could donate to him or his campaign. I did find a place where I could sign up for his newsletter, which I've done, yet to get anything from it. So I'm just... It strikes me as kind of suspicious. If the man is wealthy enough that he can afford to fund his own campaign without taking donations from anybody, that is amazing. I cannot think of any politician at any level of federal government, whether it's Congress or the presidency, who has actually done that. More power to him. If he's somebody who is in a district that is so solidly Democratic that he doesn't have to worry about anybody running against him on the Republican side or him being primaried, that's great. Again, that's kind of a rare exception for Democrats in Texas. It's not the case everywhere. I mean, there are certainly places in, blue states where a Democrat, it doesn't matter who they are or what they believe, as long as they've got a D next to their name, they're going to win. I don't know if that's the case with Al Green or not. I just find it odd that he's not accepting donations. I mean, is that, or he doesn't make it easy for you to give donations? Does that mean that he's corrupt? I don't know. But I also know that if it turns out that he was corrupt, it wouldn't surprise me. Still, he had enough to, say, fuck you, Trump, when the eyes of the world would be focused on that moment. I got to give him props for that. All right, so here's Skullbeard and I reading from Hexenhammer, and I will talk to you all next week. And it should be a news episode.
Let the reader pay attention to those 6 impediments mentioned above, though they refer to the ergomenoi, or men possessed, as opposed to somebody who's an energy gourmet, which one might be expected from the way that word looks, rather than to men bewitched. For though equal virtue is required in both cases, yet it may be said that it is more difficult to cure a bewitched person than one possessed. Therefore, those impediments apply even more pertinently to the case of those who are bewitched, as is proved by the following reasoning.
Yeah.
I call shenanigans because I guarantee you there's not going to be any reasoning in this.
I call bullshit. Ain't gonna explain shit. It was shown in Chapter 10 of the first question of the second part that some men are at times possessed for no sin of their own, but for the venial sin of another man, and for various other causes. But in witchcraft, when adults are bewitched, it generally happens to them that the devil grievously possesses them from within for the destruction of their souls. Therefore, the labor required in the case of the bewitched is twofold, whereas it is only single in the case of the possessed. Of this most grievous possession, John Cassane speaks in his Collation of the Abbot Serenus. They are truly to be judged unhappy and miserable, who, although they pollute themselves with every crime and wickedness, yet show no outward sign of being filled with the devil, nor does there seem to be any temptation commensurate with their deeds, nor any punishment sufficient to restrain them. For they do not deserve even the healing medicine of purgatory, who in their hardness of heart and impenitence are beyond the reach of any earthly correction, and lay up to themselves anger and vengeance in that day of wrath and revelation of the last judgment, when the worm shall not die. Huh. Here we got a little boo pill for that.
No. If it won't die, that's when you need to see a doctor.
Ah, right.
I was on a message board ages ago, and one of the posters was a doctor, an actual doctor, and at the time there was a D.L. Hughley special where D.L. Hughley was talking about Viagra, and he says, if I have an erection that lasts more than 4 hours, I'm calling a hooker, not a doctor. Well, this doctor did not find that funny at all. He's like, you don't understand that. It's like, dude, man. Chill the fuck out.
It's what we call a joke, man.
Joke. Man, yeah. And a little earlier, comparing the possession of the body with binding of the soul in sin, he says, far more grievous and violent is the torment of those who show no sign of being bodily possessed by devils, but are most terribly possessed in their souls, being fast bound by their sins and vices. For according to the apostle, a man becomes the slave of him by whom he is conquered. And in this respect, their case is the most desperate, since they are the servants of devils and can neither resist nor tolerate that domination. It is clear, then, that not they who are possessed by the devil from without, but they who are bewitched in their bodies and possessed from within to the perdition of their souls are, by reason of many impediments, the more difficult to heal.
Well, yeah. Obviously.
Yes.
Our third main consideration is that of curative charm. And it is to be noted that there are two sorts. They are either quite lawful and free from suspicion, or they are to be suspected and are not altogether lawful. We have dealt with the first sort in Chapter 5 towards the end, where we disposed of a doubt as to the legality of using herbs and stones to drive away a bewitchment.
They'll have in secret herbs and stones.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a motherfucker. Sorry.
Now we must treat the second sort, which are under suspicion of not being altogether lawful, and we must draw attention to what was said in the introduction to the second question of the second part of this work, as to the 4 remedies, of which 3 are judged to be unlawful, and the 4th not altogether so, but vain, being that of which the canonists say that it is unlawful to oppose vanity to vanity. But we inquisitors are of the same opinion as the holy doctors, that when, owing to the 6 or 7 impediments which we have detailed, the remedies of sacred words and lawful exorcisms are not sufficient, then those who are so bewitched are to be exhorted to bear with patient spirit the devils of this present life for the purgation of their crimes. And purgation can sometimes mean barfing.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. And not to seek further in any way for superstitious and vain remedies. Therefore, if anyone is not content with the aforesaid lawful exorcisms, and wishes to have recourse to remedies which are at least vain, of which we have spoken before, let him know that he does not do this with our consent or permission, but the reason why we have so carefully explained and detailed such remedies is that we might bring into some sort of agreement the opinions of such doctors as Duns Scotus. I have no idea who Duns Scotus is.
Never heard of him.
Nope.
Oh,
And Henry of...
maybe it's the dunce SCOTUS?
That would explain a great many things. And Henry of Sagostio on the one hand, and those of the other theologians on the other hand. Yet we are in agreement with St. Augustine in his sermon against fortune tellers and diviners, which is called the Sermon on Auguries, where he says, "Brethren, you know that I have often entreated you that you should not follow the customs of pagans and sorcerers, but this has had little effect on some of you. Yet if I do not speak out to you, I shall be answerable for you in the day of judgment. And both you and I must suffer eternal damnation. Therefore I absolve myself before God that again and again I admonish and adjure you that none of you seek out diviners or fortune tellers, and that you consult with them for no cause or infirmity. For whosoever commits this sin, the sacrament of baptism is immediately lost in him, and he at once becomes a sacrilegious and a pagan, and unless he repents, will perish in eternity." And auguries, the auguris, which is often ascribed to another writer, may be found in the Migne, St. Augustine, AP 52268. No, I am not going any farther into that because fuck you.
Fine, I'll take the next two. And afterwards he adds, "Let no one observe days for going out and coming back, for God hath made all things well, and he who ordained one day ordained also another. But as often as you have to do anything or to go out, cross yourselves in the name of Christ, and saying faithfully the Creed or the Lord's Prayer, you may go about your business, secure in the help of God." How's that working out for you?
Yeah.
But certain superstitious sons of our times, not content with the above securities and accumulating error upon error and going beyond the meaning or intention of Scotus and the canonists, try to justify themselves with the following arguments. Their natural object have certain hidden virtues, the cause of which cannot be explained by men, as a lodestone attracts iron, and many other such things which are enumerated by St. Augustine in the City of God 21. Therefore, they say, to seek the recovery of one's health by the virtue of such things when exorcisms and natural medicines have failed will not be unlawful, although it may seem to be vain. This would be the case if a man tried to procure his own or another's health by means of images not necromantic but astrological, or by rings and such devices. They argue, also, just as natural matter is subject to the influence of the stars, so also are artificial objects such as images, which receive some hidden virtue from the stars by which they can cause certain effects. Therefore, it is not unlawful to make use of such things. This makes me think of goop for some reason.
What?
Goop? You know goop, right?
Oh, okay, okay.
right? With
Because
the
all I
with
was
the
hearing was,
steamed clams and the
yeah,
coffee enemas and
all I was hearing was, "Whoop," and I'm like, what?
no, man, goop. You know,
Yeah,
with
dude.
dude, with all the
Yeah. What's her
woo
name?
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, candle smells like her vagina.
Uh-huh. That's the one.
Yeah, she was kind of appealing, and then she had to go do the goop stuff and stop being Pepper Potts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Duns Scotus, um, not somebody I'd ever heard of. He's a Scot who was like hugely influential in the medieval period.
Huh.
Like one of the foremost important people in terms of philosophy in that time.
Huh.
Uh,
Okay. I've never heard of him.
Nor have I. I mean, I've heard of, like the other people he's linked with, like Thomas Aquinas, Bonaventure, and William of Ockham.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never heard of him. And then the other guy is kind of important, but not nearly so. And he's an Italian, so a bit different. I'm going to have to poke around.
That's a bit odd. A Scotsman working
Yeah.
with somebody who can't stack rocks without fucking concrete. Scotus and the
you know what?
Canonist. I think that'll be my ukulele death metal cover band.
And you know what made Roman concrete so good, don't you?
Twice baked carbonates? No, wait. Lime.
Volcanic ash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And apparently that's the same stuff that made the Egyptian concrete that we have very little of because they stripped it off the pyramids.
Oh. Why would they strip it off the pyramids?
Well, why would you tear down a Roman building and use it to build Saint whatever the...
True enough. Okay, say no more. People are dicks.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's somebody who has done a scholarly article, and I haven't read everything about it. Or no, they've done a scholarly book, and I've read an article about it. That's how it works. About how a lot of shit got into various museums, and it's like, yeah, okay, so there's definitely some theft and things like that, but at the same time, you had the British showing up someplace, and they're like, oh gosh, that's some really important statues. Can we buy that off you? And the locals were like, yeah, we were just going to use that break it up and use it as, to build something. And it's like, so demanding it back now, saying it was stolen, maybe that's not the case. It's like, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of, and that's one of the things they said is it's like, you're looking at this and you're like, wow, this is a really complicated issue, and nobody's addressing it the way it should be addressed.
You know why the pyramids don't make an appearance in the Royal whatever museum?
Yeah, because they were too heavy for the British to steal.
Yep, exactly.
If you have not read the book, The Writing of the Gods, put it at the top of your list.
The Writing of the Gods. Okay.
I think that's the exact title. That's not like 90% close. It is about the Rosetta Stone and trying to translate Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Ah, okay.
Dude, man, it is as exciting as the good Indiana Jones movies.
Okay.
Let me. Come on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, The Writing of the Gods, Edward Dolnick.
Yeah, I got it here. I can get it from Malazan. Ooh.
I use. I don't know if it's available in Kazakhstan, but Libro.fm. They don't have all the Audible audiobooks, but they have a lot of them. And one of the things they let you do is they say, you pick a local bookstore and we'll share the payments with them.
Oh, okay.
So
Never heard of them.
Yeah. I don't know if they're available in Canada or not, but I mean, if they are, they're worth like I said, you can't get everything that's on, Audible or Amazon, but you can get a lot. And I'd rather give them money than Amazon.
Yeah. I really gotta slow down with the Amazon shit.
Yeah. There's all I'm doing is just stuff that I can't get easily any other way with Amazon anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've canceled my Washington Post subscription. I've canceled my Audible subscription. And the only reason I still have a Prime is because there's some shit I can't get easily unless I get it from Amazon. So
yeah, well, we had a postal strike, and Amazon has their own delivery.
Yeah, I know.
Network.
But like with me not having a car, I can't get to certain places where I could buy certain things easily.
Yep.
Unless I want to take an Uber. I mean,
you want to take your chances with an Uber.
Oh, well, I'm not. My cishet white male privilege says I really ain't got to worry about that. But it's just like if I want to go to, I want to go to Nashville, it's $30. So shipping is kind of cheap if I get it off by Amazon. And at least with Amazon, I know it's not some random website where I'm not sure I'm going to get the thing or if they're going to steal my credit card info. So,
but aside from that, they're fucking evil fuckers.
Oh, did you? Speaking of the evil fuckers and terrorism in the United States, some poor woman in New Orleans.
Yeah, I heard
about
that. I heard about that.
Works at Amazon, and they were like, "No, you're still going to have to come to work." And then, once it hit the media that Amazon was saying somebody with a bullet in their foot has to come to work, Amazon said, "No, no, you don't have to come back to work."
Not just yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your country is strange to me. The ways of your people are strange to me.
Yeah. Mammon. That's our god. Mammon. All right. And afterwards he adds, let no one observe days for going out and coming back.
I read that one. You want besides the devils.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure. Besides the devils let me start that again. Besides, the devils can, in very many ways, change bodies. As St. Augustine says in De Trinitate 3, and is evident in the case of those who are bewitched. Therefore, it is lawful to use the virtues of such bodies for the removing of witchcraft.
As you said.
Okay. Yeah. But actually, all of the holy doctors are of an entirely contrary opinion to this, as has been shown here and there in the course of this work. No.
Therefore, They're setting up the non sequitur here. Therefore,
You think?
the whole thing's a setup for a non sequitur, for a series of non sequiturs. Therefore, we can answer their first argument in this way: that if natural objects are used in a simple way to produce certain effects for which they are thought to have some natural virtue, this is not unlawful. But if there are joined to this certain characters and unknown signs and vain observations, which manifestly cannot have any natural efficacy, then it is superstitious and unlawful. Wherefore, St. Thomas, 2Q96, Article 2, speaking of this matter, says that when any object is used for the purpose of causing some bodily effect, such as curing the sick, notice must be taken whether such object appears to have any natural quality which could cause such an effect, and if so, then it is not unlawful, since it is lawful to apply natural causes to their effects. But if it does not appear that they can naturally cause such effects, it follows that they are not applied as causes of those effects, but as signs or symbols, and so they pertain to some pact symbolically formed with devils. Obviously. Also, St. Augustine says in The City of God, 21, the devils ensnare us by means of creatures formed not by themselves, but by God, and with various delights consonant with their own versatility, not as animals with food, but as spirits with signs, by various kinds of stones and herbs and trees, animals and charms and ceremonies. What?
Yeah, exactly. Secondly, St. Thomas says the natural virtues of natural objects, seems a bit redundant, follow their material forms which they obtain from the influence of the stars.
Obviously.
And from the same influence they derive certain active virtues. But the forms of artificial objects proceed from the conception of the craftsman, and since, as Aristotle says in his Physics, I guess that means one, they are nothing but an artificial composition, they can have no natural virtue to cause any effect. It follows then that the virtue received from the influence of the stars can only reside in natural and not in artificial objects. So satellites that are man-made should not be influencing. I don't know. This is just getting too weird. Therefore, as St. Augustine says in The City of God, 10, Porphyry was in error when he thought that from herbs and stones and animals and from certain sounds and voices and figures and from certain configurations and the revolutions of the stars and their motions, men fabricated on earth certain powers corresponding to the various effects of the stars, as if the effects of magicians proceeded from the virtue of the stars. But as St. Augustine adds, all such matters belong to the devils, the deceivers of souls, which are subject to them. So also are those images which are called astronomical, the work of devils, the sign of which is that they have inscribed upon them certain characters which can have no natural power to effect anything, for a figure or sign is no cause of natural action.
Yeah, I smell toast.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one here. But there is this difference between the images of astronomers and those of necromancers, that in the case of the latter there is an open invocation and therefore an open and expressed pact with the devils, whereas the signs and characters on astronomical images imply only a tacit pact.
Right. As you say.
Oh.
Thirdly, there is no power given to men over devils. whereby a man may lawfully use them for his own purposes, but there is war declared between man and the devils, therefore by no means may he use the help of devils by either a tacit or an express pact with them. So says St. Thomas. So we're in a holy war, but you can't play for the other. You can't get the other team to play for you. No double agents. Das ist a war crime, a holy war crime.
Yeah. To return to the point, he says, by no means, therefore not even by the means of any vain things in which the devil may in any way be involved, but if they are merely vain, and man in his frailty has recourse to them for the recovery of his health, let him repent for the past and take care for the future, and let him pray that his sins may be forgiven, and that he be no more led into temptation, as St. Augustine says at the end of his rule. Is that the one where he says, give me purity and chastity, but not yet?
That's a pretty good rule of thumb there.
Yeah. I don't know. I vote we call this a forking place.
I think this is a wonderful place to stick a pin in it.
That's it for this episode of the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. It's also on Stitcher, and most of the episodes are on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter at TParkAtheist, and it's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to donate to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show's notes page. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.